nice, quiet, empty staircase for the next 10 minutes as my break runs out for linear algebra class. So, in terms of the videos that I've recorded, not in terms of the videos that I've uploaded, it has still been quite some time between now and then. And I had the intention of making a video series. Whether or not it's a series will be determined by the next video that I make, not this one. I watched I did listen to the Rooster Teeth podcast, now I watch it. And Gus, which is a regular member, has expressed annoyance with events being called first annual because something is not an annual thing if it's the first instance of it. Because for all you know, the next one is going to take place in 2 years, or it's not going to take place at all. So it's only annual a year after the first event. So I wonder if it's the 0th annual, and everything can be a potential 0th annual. But it's also, an event can be a 0th daily at the same time, because you don't know if you decide to do it, the event, the next week, then it'll be the first weekly. Or a month later, it'll be the first monthly. Or a year later, it'll be the 0th yearly or annual event. And I guess I've kind of clumsily and unexpectedly stumbled onto the subject of this video because I intended to make a video series, a kind of chronicling I guess my thoughts that I'm getting, my creative interpretation and elaboration on Howard Bloom's latest work, The God Problem, which I have bought in response to, I guess he had, I first heard of Howard Bloom, perhaps haphazardly, but most notably when he did many interesting interviews with TJ, the Amazing Atheist. And he kind of talked about how he was working on this book, and I followed him on Facebook, and he talked about it as it was approaching release. And I guess some of the response to the book kind of interested me, and obviously some of the ideas that Howard said were going to be in the books interested me. I can't even remember if I said the title of the book. It's called The God Problem. It is dealing with the problem of how a cosmos can be creative if you do not rely on, a kind of guiding intelligence that's already there to imagine this stuff. How does creativity manifest on an empty playing field? How does emptiness turn into non-emptiness? And I guess the first thought that I had in, I think it was the introduction, not really chapter 1, was how you can take the amount 0 and you can divide 0 in terms of you can divide 0 into different parts, not in terms of division, but in terms of addition and subtraction. 0 can turn into a -1 and a +1, or a whole combination of stuff, as long as at the end they end up being 0. I'm not really sure if that's the gist or even an oversimplification. Maybe it's just plain incorrect when we're talking about things like, I guess, quantum potential, or whatever resulted in the Big Bang. But it is still a thought that I had when reading the introduction. Now I'm on, I think I've started reading the section of his book called The Second Heresy. The first one was A is not equal to A. The second one, I can't even remember what it was, but I guess since I completed the first A is not equal to A, I'll talk a bit about that. And that's kind of like why I said I was unexpectedly and clumsily leading into what I was going to talk about in this video, because I ended up talking about how something can have multiple, I guess, contradictory identities at the same time. That identity is something flexible as long as you're thinking of different frames, and those could be frames of possibility, frames of perspective, and so on. He kept using I think the idea that you and I can have frogs, and the identity frog, we admit, is the same thing. Both of these are frogs, and a frog is a frog. But one frog is not the same as another frog. Something that I think he might have alluded to, though was much more prevalent in my kind of like nagging thoughts as I was reading his kind of presentation of both A equals A and A is not equal to A as being both true at the same time, was that they are both true not in some kind of wacky, paradoxical sense, but while literally or mathematically they are paradoxical, they are not in reality paradoxical, because they both coexist in a reasonable way, or at least in a way that we can rationalize. And that's in the sense that the generalizations, the kind of, what makes a frog, what makes a certain pattern, a certain kind of a generalized pattern within space and time, and matter and energy and whatever. What makes that a frog is also what makes another kind of moment in space and time a frog, even though they aren't identical in most respects. There is a kind of pattern that can be generalized, I guess, into an idealized pattern, which we are calling frog. So those two, that kind of general pattern within these two things, let's call them things, is the frogness of these things. It's what makes them a frog. Now, simply because both of these things have shared qualities that make them frogs does not mean that all of their qualities are the same. Perhaps I can make a comparison with the phrase that all men are, no, what is that? I'm kind of losing the, I'm at a loss for the specific version of this phrase, but it's like all oranges are fruits, but not all fruits are oranges or something. Now maybe some kind of parallel could be made with that, but I'm not going to bother working it out. But that's the thing. A frog is a frog, but two frogs are not identical, because we're only talking about their frogness, which they share. So a certain subset of their qualities are the same. But of course, they have like a near infinite amount of qualities to them that we can kind of isolate and find. And they are never going to be, all of those qualities aren't going to be equivalent, but there is so much in common with each other that we can say that they're both frogs. But we can further break that down and say that, okay, well, let's not talk about frogs. Let's say, okay, well, they're both living things, or they're both green, or they both have tongues. They're both in this general area. They live in the same pond, let's say. Or they're both breathing this, or they both existed in a certain time period, within 10 years of each other or something. So we can find we can isolate all these kind of like qualities and generalize those qualities into a label, and say that, okay, well, they are both within this label, they both share these qualities, but whatever's outside of them is going to be different, or they may be different, they may or may not be different. So I can say that, you know, two pieces of music, they're both, let's say, they're both classical, what we would just call classical type music, and that does not mean that, you know, that outside of that they're both played with the same group of instruments, but maybe they are. So we'll have another label. They're both, I guess, string classical music, and maybe or maybe not. They were composed by the same person. Maybe they're played by a different band, different orchestra. So that's, I guess, I guess, evening out, the rationalization behind A is both equal to A and not equal to A, in that these labels are equivalent to each other, or the label is itself, the label corresponds to a subset of qualities, but not all, I guess, not all instances of this quality share things in common with each other that are not addressed under that label, under that generalization of those qualities. So the idea of A, the label of A, the group of qualities that is A, is equal to itself. But something that we group under that label is not equal to something else that is grouped under that label. Not all classical songs are the same. Not all piano pieces are the same. But they're all played by the instrument, the piano. They're not all played by the same piano. So yeah, I mean, I can go on and on with this, but if you've been following me, you should get the idea. All right, so that's it for my first video on Howard Bloom's The God Problem.